Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Elizabeth Burakowski, and I'm a research assistant professor at the University of New Hampshire. I study snow for a living, and I'm here today to give you a Climate Science 101. I'm going to be talking about the evidence for climate change, the causes of climate change, its impacts on ecosystems and society, and lastly, what sorts of solutions we can look at to addressing the problem. So let's start with the evidence. Well, we've known since about the 1850s that gases like carbon dioxide trap heat in Earth's atmosphere and warm the surface. We've also known from ancient records in climate that are recorded in ice cores and marine sediments that CO2 levels are the highest they've been in the past 3 million years. Ice cores in particular provide a very accurate snapshot of what atmospheres look like because they trap it in ice bubbles. When we look at those records, what we see is that CO2 did go up and down, and it did lead to glacial ice ages and warm interglacial periods. But today, right now, we are well outside the realm of what could be considered a normal level of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. This has led to rapid warming of our atmosphere, especially over the last 50 years. This means that we've also seen changes in sea level as glaciers melt and ice sheets. Places like coastal communities are having to change the way they think about their coastal infrastructure because of this. We're also seeing changes in snow cover. We're thinking about when we think about looking at changes in snow cover, a lot of it is happening during the spring season. This is when we see the largest retreat and shortening of the snow season. We've also seen a number of areas that have been hard hit by coral bleaching events. This is because of temperature, and then we also see complicating impacts from ocean acidification. A lot of the carbon that's gone into the atmosphere, unfortunately, has been absorbed by the ocean, making them more acidic. This dissolves shells for creatures that are part of the base of the food chain in their oceans. When we talk about the causes of climate change, it's been very well known what causes warming of the atmosphere. What we do also know is that a lot of that carbon that's entered the atmosphere is coming from the burning of fossil fuels. And that's because carbon in the atmosphere has a special signature associated with it when it comes from a long-term storage reservoir like coal, oil, or gas. That was carbon that was trapped from the atmosphere and brought down into the rocks. That was happening hundreds of millions of years ago. When you burn it and release it back to the atmosphere, it is fundamentally different from the carbon that's already been in the atmosphere. When we talk about impacts on ecosystems and society, one thing we really need to acknowledge is that our marginalized developing countries and those that have been historically not represented in terms of the cause of climate change, they're the ones that are experiencing the worst impacts. They are, by and large, going to experience the most impacts and have the least resources to adapt to those types of impacts. When we think about the changes to the snow season, for example, a place like northern New Hampshire, which receives 45% of its visitors' spending from the ski industry, they're going to be at risk for economic losses. When we think about climate change and its impacts on snow storage in the western United States, that means that those regions are going to be much more vulnerable to forest fires and drought. All of these impacts lead to a desire to have solutions, right? If we can't address the problem, then we aren't going to get to a solution. So our solutions are generally broken down into two different categories. We have mitigation, and then we have adaptation. Mitigation is when you are pulling carbon down from the atmosphere and putting it back into long-term storage, or you're reducing the amount that's going into the atmosphere in the first place. So for example, transitioning to renewable energy resources, either through wind or solar, that would be an example of mitigation. When we think about adaptation, that is when we adjust our behaviors or our way of life to accommodate these rapid changes in climate, including warming, including more rain coming in extreme precipitation events, and including winters that are shorter. So for example, in the context of protecting winters, while snowmaking is one major adaptation that the ski industry has undertaken to extend their season and ensure that they have snow to continue to keep people employed in their business. We also take a look at types of adaptations from a standpoint of people who perhaps are living near a coastal community. When you think about a seawall, that would be another form of adaptation, putting up a giant wall to help keep the seas back from inundating coastal areas. And with that, I'd just like to conclude that I'm so happy that you all are here and willing to learn with Protect Our Winters about what you can do to help protect our planet. Thank you.